Long ago there was a king with 7 sons. As each prince came of age, the king sent him on a quest to prove his bravery and find a bride. 6 princes had already completed their journeys, though heaven only knows if they truly showed courage. Now it was time for the 7th son, Bedik, to embark on his adventure. The king gave Bedik a lightning-fast horse, a magical sword, and a bow with arrows. He said, "Go, my son, and may heaven grant you good fortune." Bedik set off, travelling far and wide. He visited lands of darkness and light, realms of fairies and giants. He battled men, beasts, and all sorts of creatures, emerging victorious each time. However, these battles cost him dearly. He lost all his servants and wealth. One day, alone and weary, Bedik came upon a magnificent marble castle, adorned with gold and jewels. It was surrounded by lush orchards and beautiful gardens. He explored the area but couldn't find a single person. Deciding to wait, he hid behind some bushes. As evening fell, a giant covered in armor approached. The earth trembled with each step he took. When he neared the castle, he sensed Bedik's presence and bellowed, "Aha! I smell a human. I go hunting in the mountains and the prey comes to my home. Show yourself, human, or I'll make a snack of you." Bedik observed the giant from his hiding spot. He was unlike anything the prince had ever seen. Neither sword nor arrow could pierce his armor. Despite his fear, Bedik decided to face the giant and stepped out from behind the bushes. "Who are you?" the giant demanded. "Not even birds or snakes dare approach my castle. How did you venture here? Haven't you heard of the invulnerable giant?" Bedik stood tall and replied, "I have indeed. My name is just as famous. I am Bedik. I've traveled the world, and, hearing of you, came to challenge you to a duel." The giant stared at Bedik for a moment, then suddenly sneezed. The force of air from his nostrils sent Bedik flying 10 yards away. Laughing, the giant said, "Ha! You don't seem fit to fight me, do you? Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. I've heard of you. You're a brave little fellow. But you see, you can't harm me because I'm invulnerable. Why don't you become my servant instead? I need a skilled human helper, and I don't think I could find a better one than you. Bring your weapons. We might need them for hunting and other tasks." Bedik, seeing no better option, agreed. They lived together for some time, until one day the giant confided in Bedik. "You see, I'm immortal, but I have a worry that gnaws at me day and night. The king of the East has a daughter of unparalleled beauty. I've tried 7 times to kidnap her, but I've failed each time. If you can bring her here, I'll reward you like a king." "I'll bring her for you," Bedik said, seeing an opportunity for adventure. "Do you promise on your soul?" the giant pressed. "I do," Bedik replied, and immediately set off on his mission. After a long journey, Bedik reached the city of the king of the East. He disguised himself as a farmer's boy and became an apprentice to the royal gardener. From there, he caught sight of the princess sitting by her window, working on her needlework. She was so beautiful that she seemed to outshine the sun itself. Bedik fell in love instantly and began to regret his promise to the giant. One day, while his master was away, Bedik put on his princely clothes and rode his lightning horse through the royal gardens. The princess saw him from her window and was captivated. She had never seen such a handsome young man. The next day, the princess sent 2 of her maids to Bedik with a message of her love. Bedik responded, explaining who he was and how he had heard of her beauty. He said he was ready to do anything she asked. The city was surrounded by high walls, built to keep out the invulnerable giant who attacked yearly, trying to kidnap the princess. The city's brave defenders had always managed to repel him. Bedik knew his task would be challenging. A few days later, the princess sent another message through her maids. "Tomorrow is the Nevasad festival. All the maidens in the city will be out celebrating, but I'm not allowed to leave because it's the day the invulnerable giant usually attacks. However, I'll be in the walled garden by the riverside. Come there, and I'll watch you display your bravery." The next day, Bedik dressed in his princely attire, armed himself with his magic sword, bow and arrows, and mounted his lightning horse. He circled the garden wall a couple of times, building up speed. With one crack of his whip, the horse leapt over the wall like an eagle, landing in the middle of the garden. In the blink of an eye, Bedik wrapped his arm around the princess's waist, placed her behind him on the saddle, and with another crack of the whip they soared back over the wall. They galloped away like a flash of lightning, leaving the princess's maids in shock, thinking a whirlwind had snatched their lady. By the time the king's horsemen were sent in pursuit, it was too late. Bedik and the princess had crossed mountains and valleys, eventually reaching a deep river at the border. With another crack of the whip, the horse swam across, emerging on the other side. As they neared the invulnerable giant's castle, the princess spoke for the first time. "Bedik, my dear, we've come so far, and you haven't spoken a word to me. You've shown no sign of love. For heaven's sake, tell me, did you kidnap me for yourself or for another?" Bedik, bound by his oath, replied sadly, "You said, 'For heaven's sake,' so I must tell you the truth. I've kidnapped you for the invulnerable giant. I promised to deliver you to him." The princess cried out in despair, "Alas! May heaven's curse rest upon the invulnerable. He couldn't get me for all the world. It was your skill and valor that won me. Woe to frail womanhood. Maidens are slaves to their hearts. It was for you, only for you, that I eloped. If you reject me, I'd rather throw myself off this cliff and be food for fishes and birds." As the princess prepared to throw herself off the cliff, Bedik's heart burned with love. He grabbed her arm, crying out, "No, my dearest, don't harm yourself. It's because of the vow I made on my soul that I'm taking you to the giant, but the day you become his wife, I'll end my own life with this sword. Without you, life would be a curse." They then exchanged vows to find a way to defeat the invulnerable giant before marrying each other. With heavy hearts, they continued towards the castle. The giant, watching from his tower, saw them approaching and rushed to meet them. He thanked Bedik profusely and showered the princess with affection, careful not to frighten her with his rough manners. "Are you pleased with this place?" he asked her. "What can I do to make you as happy as possible?" Suppressing her hatred, the princess replied, "I'm very well, thank you. You are everything to me, but my parents only allowed me to come on one condition, that I remain a maiden for 7 more years. I've sworn an oath to do so. If I break it, their love will turn to poison and ruin my life. Do you accept this condition?" The giant, believing he had all the time in the world, agreed readily. "As you're now in my possession, I'm willing to wait not just 7 years, but 7 times 7 if necessary." They made a solemn pact, with Bedik to stay as the giant's servant and be the best man at their eventual wedding. The princess was given her own apartment in the castle, while Bedik and the giant occupied other parts. Days passed, and both Bedik and the princess grew increasingly uneasy. Killing the giant seemed impossible due to his invulnerability, and escaping was futile, as he would surely catch them. One day, as the giant lay with his head in the princess's lap, she decided to probe for information. "How did you live alone before, without companions?" she asked. "And how is it that you're invulnerable to all weapons? What's the secret of your immortality?" At first, the giant refused to answer, but the princess persisted, saying, "If you won't tell me, then you don't truly love me. Tell me plainly that you don't love me, and I'll end my life." Finally, the giant relented and revealed his secret. 7 days' journey from here is a white mountain where an unconquerable white bull lives. Every 7 days it becomes thirsty and drinks from 7 white marble reservoirs atop the mountain. Inside the bull's belly is a white fox which contains a white mother-of-pearl box. In that box are 7 white sparrows. Those sparrows are my spirits, my 7 secrets. The bull can't be subdued, the fox can't be caught, the box can't be opened, and the sparrows can't be seized. If anyone is taken, the others will escape. That's why I remain unconquerable, invulnerable and immortal." The princess immediately shared this information with Bedik, saying, "I've done what I could. The rest is up to you." A few days later, Bedik announced to the giant that he was going on a month-long journey. Instead, he headed straight to a monastery of 7 wise monks, renowned worldwide for their knowledge. At the monastery, after paying his respects at the holy altar, Bedik asked the monks, "How is the unconquerable man conquered and the unsubduable beast subdued?" The monks replied, "Man by woman, beast by wine." Armed with this knowledge, Bedik loaded 7 horses, with 7 skins of 7-year-old wine and journeyed to the White Mountain. There he emptied the 7 marble reservoirs and filled them with wine, diverting the water source elsewhere. He then dug a trench nearby and waited. After 7 days, the white bull arrived to drink. Smelling the wine, it recoiled in terror, leaping as high as 7 poplar trees before fleeing. The next day, overcome by thirst, the bull returned and drank the wine. It staggered, leapt a couple of times, and collapsed senseless. Bedik quickly approached and beheaded the bull. Meanwhile, back at the giant's castle, it was the final day of the 7-year wait. The giant had gone hunting to prepare for his wedding feast. As the bull fell, the giant began to feel dizzy. When Bedik cut off the bull's head, a violent tremor ran through the giant's body. "Alas!" he cried. "Someone has killed the white bull. It's my own fault for revealing my secret to the maiden. She must have told Bedik or another lover. The bull is dead, and I must die too. I'll go and kill the maiden. If she can't be mine, she won't be anyone else's." With that, the giant began racing back to his castle. Back at the White Mountain, Bedik cut open the bull's belly. Inside he found the fox, also drunk and stupefied. He swiftly beheaded it. At that moment, the giant lost his senses and blood began gushing from his nostrils. Bedik then opened the fox's stomach and retrieved the pearl box, which he placed in warm blood to open it. As the lid lifted, he quickly seized all 7 sparrows. The giant, now with blood streaming from his mouth and ears, his eyeballs bulging like pomegranates, was still charging towards his castle, roaring like a mad beast with sword in hand. Terrified, the princess ran to the top of the tower, prepared to jump to her death rather than face the giant's wrath. Just as the giant reached the castle door, Bedik killed 2 of the sparrows. Instantly, the giant's knees shattered. Bedik killed 2 more, and the giant's arms withered. Another 2, and the giant's lungs and heart stopped functioning. As Bedik killed the final sparrow, the giant crashed headfirst into the castle's threshold. His skull split open, his brains spilt out, and a plume of black smoke rose from his mouth and nostrils. The invulnerable giant was dead. Bedik, riding his lightning horse, arrived at the castle. The princess descended from the tower, and they embraced joyfully. They decided to return to the princess's parents and celebrate their wedding. After gathering all the giant's wealth, they mounted the lightning horse and set off towards the east. In the east, the king had been devastated by his daughter's disappearance. As his only child and heir, her loss left him worried about succession. The day after she vanished, he had consulted the 7 wise monks, who prophesied, "The hero who took your daughter is a prince. In 7 years, he will return her to you as pure and chaste as before." The anxious father waited 7 long years. On the final day, the king and his subjects prepared a grand reception. As evening approached, the king and his advisers anxiously scanned the horizon from the city's 7 towers. Just as the sun was setting, a flash of lightning appeared in the west. In an instant, Bedik and the princess arrived at the city gates on their magical steed. They were welcomed with thunderous cheers and escorted to the palace. There they knelt before the king and recounted their incredible journey. The king, overjoyed and impressed, gave them his blessing. A magnificent wedding feast lasting 40 days and 40 nights followed. Bedik and the princess ruled wisely and justly, their love having conquered seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The kingdom prospered under their reign, and the story of their bravery and devotion became a legend passed down through generations. And so, the tale of Bedik, the princess, and the invulnerable giant came to a happy end, proving that true love, courage, and wit can overcome even the most formidable of foes.